question.
Yes, Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I've given notice of the following private notice question addressed to Dr. the Honourable Prime Minister, Minister of Defence, Home Affairs and External Communications, Minister of Finance, Minister for Rodrigues and Outer Islands, whether in regard to the progressive phasing out of the social allowances schemes financed through the Contribution Sociale Generalisee, CSG funds, he will state A, the number of employers contributing thereto, indicating the amount collected therefrom since January 2025 to date, and projected collections for the financial years 2025 to 2026 and 2026 to 2027, and B, under each respective social allowance scheme, the one number of beneficiaries concerned therewith, and two, amount expected to be saved on a monthly and annual basis, respectively, until the complete phasing out thereof. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Yes, Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Let me at the very outset remind the House that the former government, in a bid to win the 2019 general elections, announced on the 1st of October 2019, on the occasion of the International Day for the Elderly, that the monthly basic retirement pension would be increased from 9,000 to 13,500 without any consideration whatsoever on the sustainability of such a decision. C'était clairement un bribe électoral. Seulement 5 semaines avant l'élection de 2019. Madam Speaker, the former government decided to introduce the CSG to finance the additional budget deficit created by this measure. However, in so doing, they simply destroyed the pension system by abolishing contributions to the National Pension Fund established since 1976 and which served as the cornerstone for our retirement system, providing financial security and stability for our citizens. With regard to Part A of the question, the rates of CSG contribution in respect of an employee earning up to 50,000 rupees a month, or 1.5% and 3% of basic salary for the employee and his employer, respectively. As regards an employee earning above 50,000 rupees a month, the rates of contribution are 3%, and for the employer, 6%. I'm informed by the Mauritius Revenue Authority that from January 2025 to date, the number of employers from the private sector who have contributed towards the CSG is 33,291. In addition, there were some 10,026 self-employed who have contributed to the CSG, and furthermore, the government has also contributed to the CSG. The total amount of the CSG collected from employers during the period January 2025 to date amounts to 5.1 billion rupees, of which 4 billion is from the private sector and 1.1 billion from the public sector. The total amount of CSG collected from employees in the private and public sectors amounts to, therefore, 2.6 billion rupees. As regards self-employed, they have contributed a total of 123 million rupees during the period January 2025 to date. The projected CSG collection from employers for financial year 2025-2026 is 9.6 billion rupees, and for financial year 2026-2027, it is 10.9 billion rupees. The total amount of CSG collection, that is including employers, employees, and self-employed, is projected to be 14.7 billion rupees in financial year 2025-2026 and 16.7 billion rupees in financial year 2026-2027. As regards to Part B of the question, Madam Speaker, the previous government had introduced a number of schemes under the social contribution and Social Benefits Act instead of paying the increase in the pension. First, the CSG income allowance was introduced from July 2022. Second, the CSG child allowance was introduced as from July 2023. Third, the independence allowance was introduced as from July 2023. Fourth, the CSG school allowance was introduced as from July 2024. Fifth, the pregnancy care allowance was introduced as from July 2024. Sixth, the maternity allowance was introduced again from July 2024. Seventh, the revenue minimum guarantee was introduced in July 2024. And eighth, the equal chance allowance was introduced in July 2024. With regard to part B1 of the question, I'm informed by the MRA that the number of beneficiaries under each scheme since January 2025 to date is as follows. 1, 349,168 under the CSG income allowance, 38,783 under the CSG child allowance, 6,780 under the independence allowance, 84,478 under the CSG school allowance, 3,909 under the pregnancy care allowance, 11,117 under the maternity allowance, 58,562 under the revenue minimum guarantee, and 610,117 under the equal chance allowance. Madam Speaker, all these allowances, except for the independence allowance, were planned to end abruptly in June 2025 by the previous government. I'm also informed by the MRA that for the period January 2025 to date, a total amount of 7.6 billion rupees have been disbursed from all these schemes. In addition, Madam Speaker, government is paying the CSG retirement benefits, the industrial injury benefit, and the disability allowance. During the period January 2025 to date, a total of 2.1 billion rupees has been disbursed for these expenditures. The previous government must have known, surely they must have known, that these allowances were not sustainable. Let me quote the former Minister of Finance when he replied to a parliamentary question in October 2023, confessed, and I quote, « Il ne reste donc rien par rapport aux contributions de la CSG », unquote. I would also like to inform the House that for financial year 2024-2025, payments effected under the CSG far exceeded the contributions being collected by some 9.3 billion rupees. Madam Speaker, the compassionate government, we are ensuring that the CSG allowances, instead of ending abruptly, as was planned in June 2025, we have decided to gradually phase it out over the next 2 years. We are also providing that vulnerable individuals and households registered on the social register of Mauritius will continue to receive these allowances in full, including the independence allowance. Furthermore, we also provided that the payment of the disability allowance to persons over 60 years who are now not eligible for basic retirement pension but will qualify under the income support criteria. B, the increase of the revenue minimum guarantee allowance has been increased from 500 rupees to 899 rupees in financial year 2025-2026 and a further 1,890 rupees in financial year 2026-2027 so as to ensure that a full-time worker earns a minimum monthly revenue of 20,000 rupees. And C, we are maintaining the equal chance allowance of 2,000 rupees per month for households earning less than 20,000 rupees monthly. Madam Speaker, the previous government had introduced the CSG to unknowingly undermine the very purpose of the National Pension Fund. The NPF, I remind the House, was established in 1976, operated as a contributory scheme. That is, both employees and employers made mandatory contributions, which were then invested to ensure long-term sustainability and to provide retirement benefits which were linked to individual contribution. In contrast, the CSG was designed as a pay-as-you-go system. That is, a tax where the funds are credited to the consolidated fund, whereby current contributions are immediately, therefore, used for payments, with no direct link between what an individual contributes and what they ultimately receive. The CSG is rapidly revealed deep structural weaknesses that now threaten the very foundations of our pension system and the fiscal health of our nation. In regards to part B2 of the question, there would have been significant savings in relation to expenditure, that is, if we had implemented what the previous government planned, that is, ending the payments in June 2025. On the contrary, we are making provision for the payment of the allowances over the next 2 years, despite the fiscal challenges we are facing. In addition, we are taking steps to reform the pension system with a revamped NPF. In this context, as I have announced in the budget speech, the setting up of a commission of experts to look into the reform of the various pillars of the pension system, as well as the revamping of the national pension system, is ongoing. The Ministry of Finance is currently liaising with both the IMF and the World Bank to assist in the formulation of the terms of reference of the Commission. I would not like, Madam Speaker, to preempt the recommendations of the Commission, but however, it is obvious that the bulk of the CSG contributions in its current form would be used to finance the new NPF system. Madam Speaker, I wish to emphasize that review of the CSG allowances needs to be considered in conjunction with the overall revamping of the pension system. This reform is absolutely critical and has to be looked into in a global or holistic manner. It does not only aim at enhancing fiscal sustainability, but will also ensure a parity between what each generation pays and receives, thereby promoting fairness in intergenerational burden sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Yes, first question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. As far as I know, those allowances were never meant to be stopped abruptly, that is in June 2025. In his reply, the Honourable Prime Minister referred to what he stated in the budget speech that is 2 months ago, that is for the setting up of a commission of experts. Already 2 months have elapsed. Can we know from the Honourable Prime Minister when that commission will be set up?
Yes, Prime Minister.
First of all, let me remind the Honourable Leader of the Opposition that he himself voted for that abrupt stopping of the CSG. And it was in the Final Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 2024. It was meant to amend the Social Contribution and Social Benefits Act, and it is said, and he said it also, to stop the payment of these allowances in June 2025. You seem to have forgotten that you voted for it. You didn't realize that you voted for it. As for the Commission on the Pension, I just mentioned that we have already chosen, but we're not naming him officially because we want to name all the members, the person who will preside, and also we are waiting for the terms of reference because you have to be very, very precise on the terms of reference. And the World Bank and the IMF are helping out with this.
Thank you. Your second question, supplementary question.
Yes, Madam Speaker, the phasing out of the CSG allowances will no doubt affect the livelihood of many families in this country. Now, during the second reading of the Finance Bill, the Honourable Prime Minister determined the sum of 20,000 rupees as the minimum monthly revenue till the end of the financial year 2026-2027. Can the Honourable Prime Minister confirm to the House whether the salary compensation for those eligible for the revenue minimum guarantee will be absorbed this time by government? And can he also confirm, based on what he said during his intervention on the Finance Bill in the House, that there will be no increase of the minimum monthly revenue till 2027?
Obvious, Madam Speaker, that with the mess that they left us, where do you get the money from? Print money from the bank again? From the central bank? No question of doing that. No question of these. As for you asked for the compensation, salary compensation, this is a matter for the PRB, and we are looking at it because there was no money in the coffers. So how do you distribute money? We do not intend to print money from the Bank of Mauritius.
For the salary compensation, I meant for the private sector, Madam Speaker.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
For the salary compensation, he meant for the private sector. That's what he just said. So maybe you can reformulate, please, Leader.
Question whether this will be absorbed by government, salary compensation are paid for workers of the private sector and the public sector also.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition surely knows this is an annual thing that happens. It's annual.
Your third.
So it will be absorbed by government then for both private and public sector. Can the Honourable Prime Minister confirm that the purchasing power of a majority of Mauritian citizens will take a hit, and this will impact not only those families but also small and medium enterprises?
Prime Minister?
I'm not quite sure I understood everything, but whatever you say, the fact is that you made a mess of the economy and we're trying to redress this situation.
Your fourth question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. The Prime Minister recalled that in the budget speech, he had announced a sum of 2 billion rupees instead of the 10 billion promised by government to reduce prices of basic commodities. Can he inform the House where matters stand and whether the mechanism has already been put in place for those 2 billion rupees?
Honourable Leader, I'm sorry. It seems to me that doesn't arise from your question. But if the Prime Minister wants to reply.
No, I was going to say it doesn't arise from the question, and furthermore, we never said 10 million. We said for the first year we are doing this, we are putting this 2 billion rupees.
You have a further question?
Yes.
Yes?
With regard to the housing loan relief scheme, which will be phased out over the next 2 years, and the home ownership and home loan repayment schemes, which will not be renewed, will the Prime Minister confirm that these decisions could significantly impact low and medium income families who very often rely on such programs, Madam Speaker, for home ownership? And secondly, can the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House what does government intend to do to help those families?
First of all, I'm not sure where the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is taking out all these statements that are supposedly made. We are looking at it, as I said, in a holistic manner, everything. I mentioned all the allowances that they gave without any thought about whether it was sustainable or not, and I mentioned all of them. And this is what I'm referring to.
Nonetheless, Leader of the Opposition, if I may, your question is on Contribution Sociale Generalisee.
But the allowances, which are derived
From the CSG, all right?
But these were not actually the schemes are not financed from the financial form of the CSG funds. These are nothing to do with the CSG funds.
Don't speak sitting down. You finished? Yes, your friend wants to speak.
I have two supplementaries, if you allow. The first being...
Now you want to start with.
Yes, thank you. The first being, given that the low-income earners earning less than 20,000, which are being guaranteed a minimum salary of 20,000 for the CSG income allowance and the minimum revenue guarantee, which is going to stagnate in the next 3 financial years to 20,000 rupees, as the Prime Minister no doubt knows. How will he protect those families from the rise of cost of living and to make good on his promise to protect purchasing power of the lowest of the low?
Already taken 2 measures to protect those at the lower rank. First of all, we just mentioned the contribution. We are doing 2 billion rupees to stabilize the prices. Secondly, we are adamant that we must try to stop this horrific depreciation of the rupee. 46% over 10 years, 46%. Already the rupee has appreciated against the dollar. I think by some 5%, if I'm not mistaken. So these are the measures we are taking.
Second question, yes?
Madam Speaker, may I ask, this is another one, may I ask the Prime Minister, given that the CSG allowances, including the CSG income allowances, including the CSG family allowances, that is child, school, maternity and housing, are being cut by 33%, 1/3, while the budget doubles down on sugar tax, hikes in motor vehicle and road license fees, and also significantly widens the VAT net to thousands of small retailers, which will have a significant increase on the cost of living. How will he protect the rest of those persons earning, therefore, 20,000 or more up until 50,000 from the significant increases in the price of living, making good on your promise?
Should have asked the former Minister of Finance, when he was destroying the economy, what was he going to do for that? You should have asked him.
Okay.
Last question.
Yes, last question.
Thank you. The Honourable Prime Minister in his replies stated that some 10,026 self-employed have contributed to the CSG. Now, with regard to those self-employed, will the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House whether now this category of workers who were contributing to the CSG fund will now be asked to contribute to the whole NSF and NPF system?
As I said, Madam Speaker, we're looking at the whole pension scheme. We want to re-establish the National Pension Fund, which was destroyed by your government. We are appointing a committee. We are waiting for the terms of reference. We could do the terms of reference, but we would like to have experts to guide us. The World Bank has huge experience in that, and also the IMF, and they are about to give us the terms of reference.
Thank you, Prime Minister. That is it for PNQ today.